quick emergency reaction edition of Locked On Auburn. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Hugh Freeze just wrapped up previewing Auburn's fall camp, and it went about how you would think it would go. A lot of the messaging carried over from what he said at SEC Media Days in Atlanta just a few weeks ago. We predicted on this morning show that he would bring up the Malcolm Simmons stuff on his own in his opening statements. He did not do that. Of course, it was the first question that he was asked. I believe it was Jason Caldwell that asked it. And Hugh Freeze, I do think, is handling it the right way by making it not really his decision. I talked about that from a legal point of view. Like, I think this decision is going to be made for you. And he said that, you know, the administration has cleared him. And then he was pressed a little bit more by Joseph Goodman later in the press conference of AL.com. And he deferred it all to the administration has cleared him. And that's all there is to it. I do think that's the way to handle it. And you also have to assume that they have access to more information than we do as well. So take that for what it's worth. Malcolm Simmons will be practicing with the team today and going through fall camp. He didn't say anything about suspensions or anything like that. I'm sure that'll all come with time, or they might just quit talking about it and it go away. We'll see. We'll see what happens there. To stay on the topic of wide receiver, he was asked about the addition of Eric Singleton and what that would mean to be opposite of Cam Coleman, which I don't love that question. Like, that happened forever ago, but I do think his answer was interesting. He didn't want to really answer the question. He's like, yeah, Eric's great, Eric's cool, but like, we've got more than two good wide receivers, which is correct. Of course, he mentioned Malcolm. He mentioned Perry Thompson, which admittedly we don't talk about enough on this show probably. So I love that he brought up Perry, brought up Horatio Fields. And then when he was asked about freshmen, he brought up Sam Turner. And Sam Turner's a guy in the spring that he kept talking about and we kept talking about because he kept making play after play after play. And I don't think people realize exactly how big Sam Turner was this past spring. But he did add the caveat of, like, when you're talking about all these freshmen, some of them that are impressive are at these positions that are just absolutely stacked and absolutely loaded. Sam Turner, and then you talk about some of these corners that he really likes with Donovan Starr and these guys. It's just like they're buried because that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to get talented freshmen, but also you have talented sophomores and talented juniors. That's kind of where Auburn is at several positions, which is exactly where Hugh Freeze wants it to be. As far as anything else noteworthy, Jeremiah Cobb apparently has an injured finger. Don't love that, but you know, if it was another running back, if it was Damari or Darrell or Alvin, I think I'd be like less concerned with it. But the way we've talked about how Jeremiah Cobb is going to be used in this offense is he's going to be multifaceted. He's going to run the ball, sure, but we think they're going to throw him the football, and you need your fingers to catch the football. It didn't sound like it was a major concern that he would just be limited. So he's going to be in that yellow jersey when they practice tomorrow and probably for the bulk of fall camp. And also, like, I don't know if how much, like, is there a major reason to tackle Jeremiah Cobb? Like, do we really benefit from that happening? I would say no. So we'll see. I mean, it sounded like it's going to heal fine. They're just going to be super particular with how it heals. Other injuries that they spoke about was Hollis Davidson, the freshman tight end. He was limited in spring. I do think he practiced towards the end of spring because I think we saw him at the 8A practice. But tight end's interesting because, like, I mean, we talked about the freshmen that are impressing at certain positions. I think tight end's there too, and they're not buried by a lot of guys just because of the nature of Rico Walker entering the portal and all of that. So, like, the other freshman tight end that is healthy, Ryan G, and I'm not just saying this because he comes on the show. I'm not just saying it. But I do think he might play more than we're giving him credit. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with tight end. But they mentioned Hollis and Jeremiah Cobb as being limited there. As far as Hugh Freeze talking about his offensive line, I mean, he's using words and phrases about an Auburn offensive line that I can't ever remember using, which is super cool. But he said he got their draft grades back, and he said that all 5 of the projected starters and 2 tall are draftable players. Let's just say that again for 1 second. When we've been in the potato famine of just not being able to keep talented offensive linemen or even get them on campus, that he said that their NFL draft grades came back and Auburn's 5 projected starters are all expected to be draftable players. We all know that was Xavier Chaplin, #1 player in the portal. Dylan Wade, I think, is going to benefit so much for being able to scoot in from left tackle to left guard and play his natural position. We all know how special Connor Lew is at center. At right guard, Jeremiah Wright, I mean, I hope he gets drafted. That'd be a great story because, goodness gracious, he was super patient, and now he's really getting his chance. Then, obviously, at right tackle, Mason Murphy, the transfer from USC. I was wrong on him, clearly. I was very skeptical when Auburn added him, and I thought Too Tall would win that battle, and it doesn't even sound like Too Tall's getting a shot, because Hugh Freeze said there are 5 projected starters and 2 tall. So it's like, okay, all right, Xavier Miller is clearly the backup tackle, probably on both sides, but we'll see. We'll see how all that develops. But obviously a ton of energy and excitement about the offensive line. In just a second, he talked interestingly about the quarterback situation, both with Jackson and with the backup situation. I'll tell you about that in just a second right here on Locked On Auburn. This bonus emergency podcast brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets for anything. It's the summer. There's a bunch of concerts going on. Baseball's in full swing. Whatever you need a ticket for to get in, head over to the Game Time app. It's free on your phone's app store. And when you make an account, use promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you will get $20 off your first ticket purchase. You can see the views from your seat if you're unfamiliar with the venue. And you can save up to 60% on last-minute ticket deals as well. Just download the Game Time app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. You won't regret it. It's the only place we buy tickets. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Asked about Jackson Arnold a few times, and like the familiarity was asked about, like, between Hugh Freeze and Jackson Arnold, and I think that's interesting because he hasn't been here that long, but I do think that's the biggest difference, and there are several differences, but I do think the biggest difference between, like, people wanting to compare Peyton Thorne's first year and how that went to what Jackson Arnold's capable of. There's a lot of differences, but a major one is Peyton not going through spring. He got here after spring, he graduated from Michigan State, then transferred. Jackson obviously went through spring here, and I think that's crucial. I think the weapons are better. I think the offense makes more sense for what he wants to do, all of that good stuff. But he did mention, Freeze did mention, like, hey, they're not at the point yet where they're, like, finishing each other's sentences. That level of familiarity is not quite there, which makes sense. I mean, what are you expecting? What are you expecting? They haven't prepped for games yet in these one-on-one. Like, he used the example of a lot of situational stuff, but one of them is like, all right, he could talk to the quarterback up to 15 seconds before the ball is snapped. And, you know, in a game type situation, up to 15 seconds, Hugh Freeze will be able to tell him, like, hey, the box looks good, but, like, you've got one-on-one with Cam Coleman on that side. Like, it's okay to go there. And that's just going to take reps. They're going to have to, like, specifically spend time on that, which will happen in fall camp. Jake Crane says it all the time, or he used to. You build your team in the spring, you get ready for the season in the fall. And that's part of the getting ready for the season in the fall. So I think that's cool. Then he was asked about the backup quarterback situation, which I think is extremely nuanced. Ashton Daniels, now part of this team. He did not go through spring at Auburn because he wanted his degree from Stanford. Why would you want a Stanford degree over an Auburn degree? I'm joking. Totally get it. But obviously he's going to be part of this team now. And he was asked, like, is there a battle for QB2 or is it situational? And this is something that we've talked about a ton on the podcast with, all right, if somebody gets, like, if Jackson were to be unavailable in a game and it's a close game, maybe you go with Ashton because he's played a ton of football at Stanford. Or maybe if it's later in the season and you've got time to prepare and install a game plan around somebody, maybe you go with Duke's night. I don't know, so I liked how Hugh Freeze answered that. He also kind of hinted that Ashton could be used in certain situations. Mobile quarterback. Y'all know how I feel. I don't love subbing in quarterbacks and having special packages. I'm against it philosophically, especially when Jackson is athletic. So I don't know how much I love that, but our guy Darryl Dapprich will be super fired up. He'll be super fired up about that. So we'll see. And then as far as everything else, Dan Peck of ESPN 1067 asked him, like, hey, your first 3 games, or your first 3 big games, 3 of your first 5, are all on the road. At Waco, at Oklahoma, at Texas A&M. And Freeze was like, yeah, it doesn't really change anything, which is probably the right answer. And he did add, though, that since their first game is on a Friday, that normally your big scrimmages throughout fall camp are on Saturdays to emulate somewhat of a game type experience. He said this year the big scrimmages are going to be on Friday and they'll be off on Saturdays to prep, I guess, their readiness clock, if you will, for Baylor, which of course that game's Friday night in Waco. So thought that was an interesting note. And then he said, I couldn't even tell you who the other 2 road games are that he was referring to. I don't know if I buy that, but I think that's certainly the way to approach it because Baylor is so important. And then everything else, it pretty much matched his messaging from SEC Media Days. Talking about his level of excitement for this fall camp is higher than any that he can remember, the highest or the most excited he's been in a long time going into a fall camp, which is great. I think that also kind of pushes back against a few narratives that, like, you know, a lot of people say like Hugh Freeze is ready to hang it up, or like that these health concerns are holding him back. He was asked about his health. It sounds like he's fine. So I don't know what else we really wanted from an opening fall camp presser. I think Hugh Freeze told us everything we needed to hear, everything we needed to know, and I don't have really any issues with how he's handling the Malcolm thing, assuming the facts that they've got make sense. So that's all. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below or on socials. You can follow me at Zac Blackerby on all the socials, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all that good stuff. And please like the video, please subscribe. I'm traveling, as you can see. I'll try to get another show up this evening reacting to the notes coming out of the practice window. And then we talk a lot of recruiting on tomorrow's pod as well. So be sure you're subscribed on audio or on YouTube. Helps the show out a ton. Talk to you soon. This has been Locked On Auburn. Peace.